What's up, everyone? Welcome to podcast number 19. My good friend Quentin Vennie was just here, and we had an amazing conversation about his life and his upcoming book. And Quentin I sort of consider to be a mind coach. So he works with people through anxiety. He works with people through panic attacks. He's also a certified personal trainer, and he's a writer. He does a lot of writing for Mind, Body, Green. But what he does is he helps people maintain that PMA, that positive mental attitude for accomplishing everything that we want to accomplish in life. So it's pretty amazing what he does. And he has a really interesting story. So we got into that a little bit. We talked about all sorts of things. We talked about Malcolm X and the importance of Malcolm X in both of our lives. The autobiography of Malcolm X, if you guys know. If you guys follow me on social media, particularly Instagram where I'm most present, but now Snapchat. If any of you guys are into Snapchat, Everydaydetox. Check me out there. I pretty much Snapchat every day. Lots of stuff around food, lots of stuff around the cool books that I read. So it's a lot of fun. So if you've followed me on any of those social media platforms, you know that the autobiography of Malcolm X was the moment that I got on the path of health, wellness, and spirituality. And well, I imagine I was on that path the moment I was born, but it was the day that my mind really opened and I became very aware and conscious of how I wanted to be in the world. And it was a very powerful book. And it was in Quinton's life, too. So we talked a bit about that. We talked about some of the darker times in his life that led him on this path. We got into conversations about hollow tip bullets, suicide, drug addiction, things like that. But his formula, his trinity for wellness is yoga, meditation, and juicing. And that's what really opened up his mind to wanting to really value his life and to change things around and to be a prominent person in the world of health and wellness. So very cool conversation that we had. Speaking of books, if you want to go buy the autobiography of Malcolm X or like any of these cool books that I have purchased recently off of Amazon.com, you can go to Everydaydetox.org. You can go through our portal that is now there and just click the link. It will take you to Amazon. And then any purchase that you make, no matter what it is, maybe you're buying kettlebells or exercise equipment or mace bells, battle ropes, the autobiography of Malcolm X, books on digestion, whatever it is, we will get a small commission from that, and it will support the podcast. And while you're over at everydaydetox.org and you want to pick up an ebook on how to ferment vegetables at home, you can get that there as well. So check that out. Please support the podcast. While you're there, sign up for the newsletter because I'm going to let you guys know when the new center opens up. It's going to be called Vitality, but we've had some challenges. Now, when we finally work those challenges out, I'm going to let you guys know when the new center opens, and we're going to do amazing things there. In addition to colonics and cryotherapy and nutritional coaching, we're going to have dyad meditations. We're going to have all sorts of groups meet there. The podcast hopefully will be filmed there as well. We're going to build a small studio. So anyway, everydaydetox.org, sign up for the newsletter, grab an ebook, click through the Amazon portal, buy some cool shit, support this podcast, and this podcast is epic, so let's jump right in. I hope you guys like it. All right, so let's start this up. Quentin Vennie, we are live now on the podcast. Welcome, and thank you for coming out.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
As usually happens, we started talking really interesting shit before we started. So I was like, let's stop right here. I was like, we're going to do all this on the podcast.
Yeah,
so
it's important.
This is good. I feel like this is a long time coming, you coming on here.
Yeah.
And the good thing about this is like I know you, and we've done videos with Bex before, and I know you from social media, but I don't really know you. Yeah. So this is like fresh. So I don't have to pretend that like I'm hearing your story for the first time. Like I really don't know a lot. And we haven't had personal conversations or too many of them anyway. So,
very true.
But every little blip that we've had has been fascinating.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, though, what were we just talking about? We were talking about Peter Duesberg and his book, Inventing the AIDS Virus. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about Malcolm X. Yeah. So we have a lot of similarities in our life story. Because one of the main things that I was dealing with when I was going through my dark period was anxiety and panic attacks, and Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Like that book that I have up there. I don't know if anybody could see it, but I talk about this book all the time. Like that book totally changed my life. I picked up that book. I wasn't expecting it to happen, but my mind just opened, my heart opened. I changed some very, very difficult habits to shift. And it was all from just reading that book and being inspired by Malcolm's life. And it was just like, and like, I think I was 18 going on 19, or I was 19 years old, like, and I was in a dark place. Like, I don't know how, like, I just think it's like, for me, it was like divine intervention, because I didn't have it in me to get to, like, it wasn't me. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like I opened it up. I mean, it was me, but it was like that, like, strength and courage and inspiration was just it very oddly landed into an otherwise very unconscious mind. And I was like, and from there I got into the vegan thing, and, like, anyway, that's my whole story. But like, I got into this very rapid progression of improvement, of life improvement. Yeah. You know what I mean? I always look back on that and I'm like, God, I was so blessed to have that experience, because it was me, but it wasn't me. Like, I don't know what happened. Divine intervention. But, so you were telling me about how that book changed your life too, and I'm curious to hear. And I stopped you and I was like, wait, let's do this on the podcast.
No, definitely. I mean, I grew up in Baltimore, and my life has been pretty much like I like to say, I grew up on both sides of the economic spectrum. One end, I was going to predominantly white schools in the suburbs of Baltimore. And then on the other end, I was pretty much growing up in one of the roughest, most economically deprived areas of the city of Baltimore. So
why were you in a different school zone? Did your family put you there? Or?
Yeah, my mom did. Yeah. My father was a heroin addict from the time I was 8 years old until I was about 18. So in between his addiction and his imprisonment, him and I didn't really have a good relationship. And my mother grew up, her mom was an alcoholic. Her father's an alcoholic. Her mom actually passed when she was 15, so I never got a chance to meet my grandmother. And, she knew that putting me into a county school, we call it Baltimore County, a county school, would set me off on a better track than had I gone to a city school. So she was very intentional with that decision, and it was. I think it definitely helped, but there were some drawbacks. I was especially when I went to middle school, which was a magnet school. It was still a public school, but it was set up almost to mimic the college experience. So you would have a major. I was a math science major. Prior to coming to the school, we had to do like book reports, and we had to submit, papers, and we had to do an interview and dress in a certain tie, and like it was just this whole thing.
How old are you going through this?
I was, 10? 11?
10 years? Okay.
Something like that.
Because I went to a college prep school, but not till I was like 15, 14, 15.
No, this was going on. I was fifth grade going into sixth grade. They came to my school, and they were pretty much coming to get the cream of the crop.
So your mom probably saw what was going on throughout like the neighborhood, but all the other young people was like, "Fuck this!" Get him in. Yeah, my mom did something similar. We have such a similar thing, She put me in this college prep school because she was like, "He makes bad decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to physically get him in a situation."
And that was my thing. I was always a hothead. You know what I mean? I was always that guy that kind of stayed to myself. But if you push the wrong buttons, you know what I mean, it would come out. And she knew that. So she put me into this magnet school, which just happened to be predominantly white. And, it was probably maybe 25% black kids. It was a melting pot. We were learning things like Japanese and not just the traditional Spanish. We were learning French. And
did you take Japanese?
I did for like one semester, and I dropped out and said, I can't do this shit.
Okay.
Yeah, it was too. I couldn't even do well in Spanish. Like I still don't know shit about Spanish, so. Japanese was just too much. It was like the drawing. I just like, what is this? Like these are characters and not letters or like symbols and not words. I just couldn't get it. But again, going back to the whole Malcolm X thing, it was a very prejudice heavy school, especially to the black kids. I was put in a remedial English class my sixth grade year, not based on anything academics, purely based on how they felt I would perform. And it was insulting to me. Like I broke my neck, I bust my ass to get here. Like I deserve to be in regular classes. Go figure. A few years later I'm writing a book, remedial English class my ass. But It was during that time that I read the autobiography of Malcolm X.
So how old were you when you read that?
I was in sixth grade.
In sixth grade?
Sixth, seventh grade, something like that.
Yeah, that's a big accomplishment. When I picked up that book, I was 18, not really in my highest self, not making the wisest decisions at the time. But like, the first thing I recognized about that book was like it was very small print. It was a lot of words. It was written for adults,
Absolutely.
And I was just like, this is going to be a hard read, and it was. And you read that at such a young age. That's
yeah.
dope.
I mean, I can't say that I absorbed as much as I would have had I been an adult. But I definitely knew that what I was experiencing wasn't right, and I was always like a very militant person. I was always the kind of guy that stood up for myself. I was a big Huey Newton fan. I loved the movie Panther that talked about the Black Panther Party. I never liked the fact that Black History Month was only 1 month of, out of the year, and all we learned about was Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. I've always been like one of those guys that's kind of like I stand up for what's true. And I think that was one of the things that I respected the most about Malcolm. It was less, about the message at that time, and was more about the fact that he was standing up for something. He was opposing, quote, I'm using air quotes here, the system. Mm-hmm. He was opposing that. And I felt like the system, which was the academic school system, was, they were badgering me, and I was like, fuck this, I'm gonna stand up to you. And it gave me a lot of hope and inspiration, in doing that, knowing that, even though my methods at the time may not have been the best, but the message was getting across that this was not going to be tolerated.
What's fascinating to think about is that because of the work that you do, there's somebody drinking green juice right now because Malcolm X went through his life.
Yeah.
I always think about that. Like I'm working on this program in Japan where with Mari, who's the head of KD Kitchen, which is this Japanese program that we designed, and so there's people in Japan right now drinking green juice because I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and that's all because he went to prison one time. It's just like the chain is
amazing.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So was he like because you said was your father in the picture at that time? No. So
I mean, he was in the picture, but he wasn't really in the picture.
So did Malcolm X represent like a very strong male for you?
It definitely.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a lot of male role models growing up. The people that we looked up to in the neighborhood were drug dealers. You know what I mean? It were people that kind of kept us away from the streets.
Yeah.
They'd give you a couple dollars to go to the store, and just anything to kind of keep you away from that lifestyle.
So they were kind of looking out, but they were doing their thing.
Yeah,
but they were like, I kind of know.
So I didn't have any real positive role models growing up. Mm-hmm. So when I read that, he definitely stood out as one. It's a little embarrassing now to say, but even Dr. Ben Carson at that time was a big inspiration to me. I read his book when I was in the 8th grade. He was going around doing a speaking tour to support the book. And my school was able to go to Towson University and hear him speak. And it was in that moment that I was like, I can actually make it out of this hell. I can find success.
Dr. Carson, the brain surgeon, you mean?
Yep.
The presidential candidate. Yep. I think he just dropped out, though, right?
That's why I said it's kind of embarrassing to say now. But the Ben Carson then, was he was definitely a big inspiration to me.
Yeah, I'm this is probably the most I've followed an election ever because of all the stuff going on. But I just remember my grandmother loves him. She loves him. I got her. She's like, can you go on Amazon and get me, his books and do all the stuff? So like, she's really into him, and he seems pretty brilliant. But I know that he said some things, and he's got some weird ideas and positions religiously and stuff that got people going like, you're a fucking surgeon. Like, how could you believe that like the world's like 2,000 years old or something like that?
It's crazy. He's an amazing at what he's at his thing.
Yeah.
Everything isn't for everybody. I guess I tip my hat to him for giving it a shot. And we'll leave it there.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He just endorsed Trump. Yeah. That was fucking painful to watch, man. You know what Bex told me last night? She goes, Quinton hates when you start talking about politics and shit like that. Here we are talking about politics. Yeah, that was such an awkward thing, he came out. I think I posted it, and I was like, ooh, it was like watching The Office. You know, like when the humor is so embarrassingly funny that you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching Ben Carson say this. I'm like, you don't even believe your own bullshit, man. I was like, this is really, he's like sitting there, and he's like, it's like struggling just to seem authentic. And I was like, ooh, this party stuff.
I haven't followed a lot about it. I try to eliminate as much controversy from my life as possible. It's just it's for my own sanity. So I like literally I live in a bubble.
We got to really filter what comes in. It's hard to do these days when you have constant stuff coming at us all the time.
All day, through all networks, social media, television. I just actually got my cable cut off for the same reasons. Mm-hmm. It's just you have to be careful what you feed your mind. I have a propensity for depression. You know what I mean? And I've been able to kind of keep myself out of depression for the past 5 years, because of that. You know what I'm saying? Because I filter everything that I process.
Talking about mind management, I was watching your Periscope the other day, and you were talking about your coaching practice. Mm-hmm. So you're coaching. Are you more of a mental coach or like a physical coach, or both? Or what do you do for people?
Well, I work with people who have anxiety issues, and I teach them healthier management tools. So again, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety and panic disorder. For those who are listening that don't know, endured a 2-year addiction to a prescription medication, anxiety medication, survived an accidental overdose, pretty much hit rock bottom, attempted suicide on multiple occasions. And I found healing through what I consider my trinity of wellness, which is yoga, meditation, and juicing.
I love that.
Yeah.
How did that come? I mean, the Malcolm X thing happened. Well, let's look at your life a little bit here.
Sure.
You're like 10 years old, going to this fancy school. You were seeing all sorts of things on the street. And then you read the autobiography of Malcolm X. It empowered you to sort of get to have some self-ownership at a young age in that school where you noticed and you felt the injustices that were happening. And then somewhere from there, growing up, and I'm guessing, and you tell me, but I'm guessing it was through those teenage years or something. But like somewhere you started to drink, started to like fall into some dark shit.
Yeah.
So what happened in between there? Was it just like normal growing up and not in the right place, like wrong time, wrong place kind of thing, or like?
I mean, I think it was a combination of things. I felt empowered all through middle school, although it was like hell. It was like a gift and a curse. Some of my closest relationships, were or are because of that school, whereas some of the darkest times where my depression kind of started to kick in happened as a result of going there. So it was after I left that school, I went to another school, which was a predominantly black school. My mother wanted to put me into Towson Catholic High School. And again, it was a predominantly white school. And I was like, if I had to go through what I went through at Subbrook again, like I'm going to end up in prison, because it's going to be heavy. So I felt like going to a predominantly black school.
So you're just going to start knocking people out in the hallway from all the bullshit? Like,
it gets to that point. Yeah, it gets to that point. Like it had gotten to a point where I was pretty aggressive and
you're young and full of testosterone anyway.
And I was just ready to let it out. Not only that, but I was dealing with the fact that my father was a drug addict, and he wasn't a drug addict in the closet or in the basement. Like he was a drug addict on the streets. Like I seen this man.
So did he live in the home with you guys?
No. My mother moved out when I was around 2 years old, and we kind of stayed with family and friends all throughout Baltimore until she finally was able to save up enough money to get our own place. I think I was like 5, maybe 6 years old, when we finally settled and got our own place for the first time. But I was still going around my grandmother's, neighborhood where he grew up, and that's where he spent a lot of his time. So I saw him. I saw him pretty regularly, especially when he was on the streets. And with every child, your dad is like a superhero. You know what I mean? So to see this man essentially taken out by a real life kryptonite, sometimes too high to recognize me. There were times where he would take the last few dollars I had in my pocket and would use it to get high, and I wouldn't see him for weeks at a time. And then then other times he was arrested or locked up, and I would have to go visit him and spend my quality time with him in prison, with the typical, how's life. Okay, let me talk to your grandmother conversation. And it's tough to process that and then go back to a school that's treating you like trash, and wants you to learn about algebraic equations and the American Revolution. It's like, fuck the American Revolution. Like, I'm going through a real life crisis here that I don't know how to process. I don't completely understand it. I don't know why it's happening. And as a child, I'm forced to deal with this and just put it in the back of my brain and act as if everything is okay. And, I'm seeing kids, who have mom and dad coming to field trips and assemblies. And, I never even wanted to be in the school band because my mother worked 2 jobs. I knew she couldn't come to the recital. Like, why am I going to put myself through that? You know what I mean? And instead of, having a guidance counselor or someone actually try to understand, they pointed the finger and labeled me and, put me in a box. And that was when I fought to get myself out of that box.
I was listening to your Periscope the other day. Periscopes are amazing, by the way. You on a schedule for Periscope?
Yes, every Tuesday morning, 10:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, so I was checking it out the other day, and you were talking about some stuff like suicide and like being in like a real. So when did it get messy for you? When did it start to really get messy, and what brought all that on?
Well, things really got heavy for me as an adult. I moved out of the house when I was 19 years old. When I was around 21, I got involved in some street dealings.
How old are you now?
I'm 32. So, I got involved in some street dealings. Pretty much to survive, to pay bills, to live. I was too stubborn to move back home.
What were you selling?
Heroin.
Wow.
Yeah.
What your father was using.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy how that kind of just came back around.
Yeah.
But I was pretty successful in doing so. And then my son was born, and I walked away from it.
So how old were you when your son was born?
I was 24, 23, 24. He was born in January, so my birthday's in August. So I was going into my 24th year when I finally said I have to be something better for him. So it was on his birthday I stopped all of my street dealings completely.
So all the darkness happened before that.
Oh, that was something else. I mean, what oh shit.
No, we're good, I guess.
What really happened was, as an adult, I was in the finance industry, made a good, amount of money in the finance industry. I was working for New York Life, doing insurance and financial planning. This is after about 8 years of experience, about 8 years of experience in the automotive industry, because I was always in and out. Like, I started selling cars when I was 18, fresh out of high school. But fast forward to all of that, I was about 26 years old when I was officially diagnosed with generalized anxiety and panic disorder. And it was after that that I was immediately given prescription medication. Doctor said that my disorder was so severe I'd need to be on medication for the remainder of my life if I wanted to live a sustainable life, if I wanted to be normal. I believed him. I was desperate. I was literally sleeping in my car in the emergency room parking lot of the neighborhood hospital, just in case I needed to get into the hospital.
Just for a panic attack.
For a panic attack. Yeah. It was that severe.
What would they give you for panic attacks when that would happen?
Ativan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never took a med for anxiety or panic attacks. I had a different thing happen, but yeah.
I was given Ativan, and essentially that was what the prescription was, and that's what I became addicted to. The generic name is lorazepam.
So what does it do? People drop drug names. I've not taken a drug, pharmaceutical or recreational, including alcohol, in almost 22 years now.
Wow.
So when people, I have clients all the time, and people take so many drugs or get prescribed so many drugs, and they just drop names, and I have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah. It's just not my world. Or people know so many people that are on this cancer med or this thing for this or mood stabilizers. So it's so insidious. It's like in everybody's lives. So they'll just be like, oh, they're on the blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna Google that shit because I don't know. Yeah. It's not in my experience of my life. But What was I going to say about that? So, how do you get addicted to it? What does it do? It doesn't get you high, or was it just helping you feel normal? Or
Well, it does give you a bit of a buzz. It's supposed to make you sleepy. Yeah, it
bring you down.
It brings
bring
you
your
down.
nervous system down.
Essentially, that's what it is. It's a drug for your nervous system. It shuts off essentially the fight or flight response, the thing that creates the physical symptoms of a panic attack. So, when taking it, it blocks a part of the receptors in the brain from functioning in that way. So you're immediately in like a very relaxed, chill, kind of euphoric state. Like life is great. You feel like you can just, go outside and pick dandelions, and, it's just an amazing feeling. Mm-hmm. And they are highly addictive, which is something that I didn't know. And it's actually supposed to be used in conjunction with cognitive behavioral therapy, which was never an option for me.
What's the addiction? Is it that you start to get real anxious and feel like you needed to calm down, or is there a physical calling for it, or like?
It's a little bit of both. You're afraid of what your life would look like without it, but then you become your tolerance for it increases. So it's like now, instead of taking a half a pill to get the same feeling, I'm taking an entire pill. And now I'm taking 2 pills and 3 pills. And now this feeling of being on the pills has become the new normal. So now I'm constantly chasing this normal. So from the time I wake up in the morning, I'm popping pills. That's breakfast. I couldn't start my day without a pill. It had gotten to the point where being on these pills was so normal for me that if I wasn't on a pill, people were like, "Did you take your medicine today? Because you're a little on edge."
Oh, really? Yeah.
So it was like I was a much more of a pleasant person. I didn't realize that I had a problem. I didn't realize it until I was knee deep in my addiction.
Yeah, you didn't know they were addictive, right?
I didn't. And I didn't know that you were only supposed to take them for 6 weeks.
And you were taking them how long?
I'd spent a little over 2 years. I was addicted for about 2 years. Like
Probably
the addiction
good with
happened
alcohol
quick.
too.
I was amazing with alcohol. It was incredible. I mean, that's when the suicide attempts kind of came in, because I knew that, I had already gone through the overdose. The overdose was a combination of lorazepam and Vicodin, which was a painkiller that I was being prescribed for migraines. I was getting severe migraines. Like very severe migraines.
Was that a result of one of the meds or something like that?
I think that it was, to be honest, I'd experienced migraines my entire life. But I think they were heightened because I started to cut out caffeine from my diet. And I think they were a withdrawal symptom associated with excessive coming off of caffeine. I used to consume 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine easily a day. Especially working out.
What's in a cup of coffee again? Another thing that's not been in my life for 22 years.
That I don't know.
Yeah,
I was
a lot.
It is a lot, but I was taking like pre-workout supplements,
I see.
which is like drinking 8 cups of coffee.
Oh, those caffeinated ones that are basically Vivarin with a whole bunch of like amino acids and other stimulants in them. Oh, fuck that stuff. That's why people drop dead in the gym sometimes.
Exactly, and that's what I thought was happening to me. I had my first panic attack in the gym, and it was a result of a pre-workout mixed with a testosterone booster.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I was fucking up your chemistry.
Yeah, I was destroying, and I think that's what triggered it. I think that's what triggered the panic attacks, as severe as they were. You know what I mean? I think that it really just fucked me up totally.
You mentioned on Periscope the other day about the suicide thing. Did you have kind of like a angelic moment or something like that? You were talking about how like you went to go. You were in a state. And you grabbed a gun and you like stormed out of the house, and then you got to like a place and you were like, I'm gonna do this now. And
the gun was gone.
The gun was gone suddenly, which is like, what is that? What happened there? Because on Periscope, I usually don't watch the replay, so it like happens and it's just like, what did you wait? What? I gotta remember that. What was that? Was that like an angel moment, or was that just a mistake?
Dude, that was I think for me, I really think that it was an angelic moment, man. I think overall, to be here today and even having this conversation with you is a blessing, because left to my own vices, I should not be alive right now. Based on the things that I did in the streets, I was shot at multiple times, trying to intentionally kill myself, waking up the next morning irritated and upset that I'm still alive, and even that was the moment that I was like, okay, I'm obviously here for a reason. I'd spent a night drinking profusely, and I mixed the alcohol with pills, of course, so I was pretty wasted. And my girlfriend was saying to me, she was bitching and moaning, like, I don't know why every time you get with your family, you have to drink so much and, you know, blah, blah, blah. She was just like, just chastising me and just going in. And I was like, fuck it, I had enough. You know what I mean? I was like, well, maybe this world and everybody's lives would be better if I wasn't in it. I had already felt like I lost control. And she had never grew up, you know, around addiction. So she didn't know the signs, the symptoms. She didn't know anything. In her mind, by being an asshole to me was going to push me to do something different.
How old are you here?
I had to be 27.
27.
20, about 27.
So your son was already, he was already born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My second son, too.
Oh, both. Okay.
Yeah, both were.
Great. What are their names?
Jaden and Christian.
Yeah, they're adorable.
Thank
I see
you.
them on Bex's Instagram all the time. Okay, so she's giving you a lot.
She's giving me a lot of crap, and
you look. It sounds, you know, like you guys were in your 20s anyway. So like we've not mastered communication and skillful communication at that point. So, you know, and you're drunk and I don't know, maybe a little high or whatever off the pills and like very high. Yeah,
I was in a bad place, you know. And I was like, fuck it. I went. I grabbed my pistol. It was a P90, 9mm with hollow tips. It's legal.
So you had a legal. Why'd you have registered. A legal? Why?
I'm from Baltimore.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, see here, it's hard. Like you want to get a legal gun in New York, like you got to go through hoops to get a legal gun in New York.
I don't have a criminal record or anything, so it was. I filled out the paperwork, and this was before they changed the laws. Like I filled out the paperwork, you know, got my fingerprints done, took a class, and I was registered. I was registered since I was 23. Yeah, I'm not registered to carry, but I'm registered to keep one in the house for protection. And growing up in Baltimore, that's just, you know, kind of what you do, you know.
And hollow tip bullets are okay?
Hollow tip, yeah, they're actually illegal in some states, but they were legal in Maryland.
Oh, is that? Yes. Yeah. I know nothing about gun culture. We always had one in the house. My father was in law enforcement. We had a gun in the house, and you know he still has guns now, like rifles and stuff up where he lives. They moved to Maine, but aside from that, like I never had a gun.
Yeah. Well, hollow tip bullets, they explode on contact.
Yeah.
So it's
open up into you.
Opened up exactly. So it was like if you come in my house, you know, you're not leaving out.
So you can tell where I live. I'm like, what'd you have a gun for? There's people that listen to this all over the world, but there's a lot of people from around the country, and they probably, like a lot of people have guns outside of New York City.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty common, you know, in Baltimore. And but again, I'm like not going around trying to, you know, shoot them up, bang, bang. This was for protection. I had it for my family.
But you're in this dark space. You grab it.
But I grabbed it, and I put it in my waistband. And
isn't that crazy? I see people put guns in waistbands all the time. Like, I don't want to shoot my dick off. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, you got to know how to work the gun. Right. I mean, it was on safety. You know, it's nothing.
No, I know, but still, I mean, if you're going to point it somewhere, I don't know. I'd rather have it pointed back, like have a holster, point that way. Because I don't know if you ever saw this video. I feel bad for this guy. He was a police officer in a school somewhere in Brooklyn. I'm pretty sure it was in Brooklyn here. And he was giving a talk on gun safety. And he fucking shot himself in the foot in front of the whole class. Wow. And then like tried to like play it off like, okay, that's not supposed to happen. It was so embarrassing. Wow. It was so hard. And it was dangerous, of course. And the dude shot himself in the foot. I'm sure he's not an officer anymore too. Yeah. I mean, it was just so fucked. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, so I'm sorry. I go all over the place.
That's all good.
So, okay, so you put this gun in your waistband.
Yeah, I put it in my waistband. And in my mind, I walk out. You know, I just walk out the door. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm never coming back.
What time of day or night is
this? This was maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, it's like rush hour, like everyone's around.
But it was a weekend. It was Saturday. Okay. It was a Saturday. And I drive to the gas station, which is maybe 10 or 15 minutes from my house. I go buy a pack of DeJarm Blacks.
What did you smoke?
They're called DeJarms. They're cloves. Clove cigarettes.
Oh, those are rough. I love the way they smell, but those are rough on the lungs.
And they tasted delicious.
They do.
They were pretty good. So
that's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to tell me you were smoking Newports or something. I used to
smoke Newports. I used to smoke Marlboros. I was a menthol guy.
Menthol.
Yeah, I love menthol, but cloves were like my treat. It was like dessert. You know what I mean? It was like the smoker's dessert.
Yeah, I used to smoke Marlboro Reds. Those were my favorites.
Nah, I couldn't. They were heart busters, man. That's what we called them, heart busters. I couldn't do it. I needed menthol. I did Marlboro menthol lights and Marlboro smooths when they first came out. But I went and bought a pack of cloves. I sat in the car in the parking lot right by the vacuum, in the air pump, and I was crying profusely because I knew exactly what I was about to do. It was difficult to want to do, but I felt like it was necessary at the time. I felt like everybody's lives would just be a lot better without me in it. I just felt like, the walls were closing down. Like everybody was pretty much like just giving me shit for everything. I seemed like I could never do anything right. It was just one of those moments. And I reached into my waistband to get the gun, and it wasn't there.
And you didn't forget it.
In my mind, I didn't forget it.
Right, but it wasn't there.
But it wasn't there. So I'm like, oh shit. Like, where is it? Like I'm popping the trunk, I'm searching the car, I'm like looking for this gun, and I'm like, where's this gun? Like if I get caught with it, it's loaded and everything, I'm going to jail. Where's this gun?
You don't want to lose this gun.
No, I don't want to lose the gun. And I could not find it, and it was like, it was weird because I got so caught up in wanting to find the gun that I forgot what I was upset about. I forgot about why I wanted to end my life. I drove back home and I'm like, fuck, where's this gun? I get home, I open the door, I'm walking in, I look in the kitchen, the gun is on the kitchen counter, loaded by my microwave. And I was just like, and it just so happened my son was asleep, his mom was in the room, nobody even realized that it was there. It was just sitting on the counter. I don't remember ever going in the kitchen. I just remember getting the gun and walking out the door. I still to this day have no idea how that gun ended up on the kitchen counter by my microwave, but that's where it was. And I got it. I took the clip out. I took the bullet out, and that was the day I said I gotta change it. I gotta fix it. It has to happen. And the next day, I went to my doctor and told him, like, yo, I have a problem. And he was like, he was content on keeping me medicated.
Even though he knew these medications were way past the allotted time you're allowed to take them?
He wasn't my doctor anymore. He had become my dealer, So it was almost like...
Because I was going to ask you, how are you getting a medication that you're only supposed to take for 6 weeks that's prescription? How are you getting it for 2 years?
I'm getting it from him.
From the same person. Yeah. Wow,
and
that's
he said that to me. He was like, whatever prescriptions you're taking, make sure you get them from me. He said that in our first meeting. And I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, okay. And, he wanted to put me on Xanax. And I was like, dude, I don't want to be on Xanax. I don't want to be on anything. And he was like, well, Xanax is a little less, it's not as strong as lorazepam. So we'll try this. And I was just like, well, if I have to take something, then I'll just take what I'm taking. So I walked out with another prescription for refills. I sat in my car, I cried again, and I went home and I said, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. And that's when I consulted with my best friend Google, and I started to research natural healing. And the first thing that I found was Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead documentary.
Oh, is that right? That's what got you into juicing.
That's what introduced me to what juice. I had no idea. I'd never heard of juicing. The only juicing I knew was steroids, right? Like I didn't know about fruit and vegetable juicing. So I was reading this story. It's like Fat, Sick, or Nearly Dead. And I was like, well, I'm not fat, but I'm sick and I'm nearly dead. Like, let's figure this thing out. So I watched it. And, it was Joe Cross, who has an autoimmune disease, and he's overweight, and, he's taking these medications, and he was able to heal himself from juicing. So I was like, okay, it's one guy, let's see what else I can find. And, whenever you're looking at something, there's always, like, people also search for this, and they'll give you, like, recommendations.
On, like, Netflix or something? Oh, on Google.
On Google. Yeah, and the other documentary was Crazy Sexy Cancer.
Oh, Chris Carr.
Carr. And here's this woman who's, beautiful. She's modeling. She's living the life of her dreams. I think she was like 31 years old at the time, living in New York, who was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And there was no cure. And here she goes on this journey of healing. Now, this woman healed herself from juicing and enemas and all this other shit. And I'm like, she has cancer. Like, I have some mental shit going on. Like, maybe it's something to this juicing thing. So I left, I went out. I bought a $60 General Electric juicer from Walmart. It was a big Walmart by my house, a 24-hour Walmart.
My first was a juice man. You know, the old school. Just
yeah.
That works.
Keep it simple. You know, I didn't know anything about it, so I wasn't going to invest a whole bunch of money into it. So I went ahead. I bought that. I bought a whole bunch of whatever I could. I got vegetables and fruit and berries. First few juices were trash.
You know, I tried to juice a banana when I first started.
I did too.
I was like, maybe I could juice a banana.
Obviously doesn't work. It's no juice in that.
Yep.
It was a disaster. But I was like, it obviously works. So what I started to do was do research and find recipes, and I was finding recipes. And I was doing it. It was working. It was cool. I was feeling the difference. It felt good. It made me feel good. I was still smoking, still taking pills and all of that at the time. But I knew I was headed in the right direction. And then I was looking for an article. I was looking for a video for another juice recipe. And it was a lady, and her name was Tara Stiles. And it was like Hail to Kale or Hail the Kale juice or something like that. And I didn't know who she was. So I was like, okay, let's see what she's talking about. And one of the first things she said was, I got this juicer from my friend Chris Carr. So I was like, oh, I made a connection. It's like, well, if Chris Carr's fucking with her, then she's got to be somebody. So let me watch the video. So I watched the video, and then I found out later, I did more research. She was a yoga instructor. Now, I'd known about yoga when I was working at a gym, but it was like some weird thing to me at the time. You know, I wasn't into it. I was heavy lifting, and, you know, I missed the bench press.
Yeah. So Tara Stiles, by the way, for people listening, she runs a yoga school. What is it? It's called Strala Yoga. Strala Yoga. Yeah. And that's here in the city. It's in Soho, right?
It's in Soho.
Yeah.
Yep. She has a flagship studio in Soho. She has one in Singapore. There's another one in Seattle. Mm-hmm. She's amazing. She also has a clothing line through Reebok, which is one of the first non-athletes to do so, which is pretty dope. I always thought yoga was like this cult type of thing. It was like I would see people walk in barefoot, mats rolled under their arms. They'd go in a room. The lights were dark. They'd come out sweating an hour and a half later, and they would just right out the door.
Burning incense.
Yeah, it's like candles and shit. And I'm like, and this is a gym. Like, we're lifting heavy weight here. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, these people are freaks. I'm not going to be doing any of this. But when she did it, you know, it was very accessible. She wasn't using Sanskrit terms. So there was no Adho Shmukha of Svanasana. And, you know, it was, you know, come into a down dog, you know, let's lift your leg up into an open, you know, whatever, and let's come into a high lunge and then a low lunge, and we're going to get into a push-up position, and we're going to do a plank. And it was very accessible. It was language that I understood, so I tried it. At the time, I wasn't exercising at all because I'd had my first panic attack in the gym. So it was like I stopped working out.
You had a fear of having a heart attack, you told me, too.
Yeah, it was a fear of a heart attack because my grandfather died of a heart attack when I was 6.
And that planted a seed in your head
planted
or something
a seed
like
in
that.
my head.
So panic attacks feel like heart attacks
they
or
do.
Something. And, you know,
the symptoms are very similar.
Yeah. So I could see you wanting to run away from that like at all costs. Yeah. But it's interesting. Smoking and drinking and all that stuff.
It increases
heart attacks.
And it increases heart attacks, yeah.
You know? So one interesting thing, it's a little tricky. There are a lot of, and I say this for the benefit of people that are just getting into juicing or just getting into clean eating, that when people, like I knew somebody, he actually owns a juice bar now in the city. I've known him since he was like 14 years old. He's been working in juice bars around Manhattan. And he would always be fasting, and he'd go on a fast every now and again. And then he'd be telling me about the fast because he knows what I'm into and I'm his friend. And I'd smell cigarette smoke on him. I'm like, bro, you can't smoke and get into really clean eating or something like that. And that includes marijuana too. There's actually a problem that happens. It's something with beta carotene. I don't recall what it is right now, but when we increase our beta carotene, I think it's beta carotene. It might be vitamin C. But either way, you can Google it. And you smoke, it actually magnifies the destructive effects of one of the chemicals and gives you cancer faster.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't remember the detail of what the study was, but yeah, no, it's like it's a proven fact. So like someone thinks they're doing a good thing, they're juicing, but they're still smoking or smoking a ton of weed, and they're actually proliferating damage in their body.
Wow.
They'd be better off not juicing.
Yeah.
But you pull the cigarettes out, and then beta carotene becomes this incredible nutrient that could help. Yeah.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Would you mind checking that camera, make sure we're still rolling? Because I was telling Quinton earlier that
It says low battery.
it does say low battery.
10%.
All right, here we go. We're back.
We are
Technical
back.
difficulties resolved, right? Everybody working there? All right, everybody's working.
GTG, good to go.
Everything's working good. Yeah, this is a high budget operation. You
Yeah,
know what
man.
I mean? So the first one I had, somebody actually published pictures from it. Dr. Bishy's assistant. I didn't have tripods. I didn't have anything. So I had these ladders, and I had a clothing rack, and I duct taped the iPhones to them to do the Dr. Bishy podcast and the Gil Jacobs. I just didn't. I was like, I want to do a podcast. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and I was like, I'm enjoying these so much. And some of the people in my life were just so fascinating, and we'd have so many great conversations, and I was like, people would really want to hear this, because I would tell people, in my clients would come in, and we'd be going on and on, and be like, this is what Dr. Bishy told me today about something that happened in 1940 something, and it'd just be these fascinating things. And I was like, I gotta do a podcast. I was like, I got no money, it's just gonna DIY it, just gonna make it happen. So when we finally set up this new space, I keep complaining about this on the podcast, but we're having real estate troubles. When we set up the new space, I'm going to do a nice podcast studio in there. We're going to invest in some new equipment. It'll be good.
That'd be dope.
Yeah, it's going to be good stuff. We were talking about juicing, cigarettes.
We were juicing cigarettes.
We talk a lot of, it's like a podcast about health and detoxification and toxicity or whatever. And we did a lot of talking about smoking and drugs and drinking and guns on this one.
Yes. Sorry for all of my anti-gun folk. It's just the life I came from. I don't own a gun anymore, though.
So you don't have a gun anymore?
No, I sold it. I took it back to the gun store and I sold it.
Do you feel safer or less safe without your gun?
Honestly, I feel safe. I feel like you attract the energy that you put out. If I move back to Baltimore, would I buy a gun? Probably.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the city. It's it's just where I'm from. You'd rather be safe than sorry. But where I am right now, not even thinking about it.
See, here in the city with everything so tall and everybody so densely packed together, I feel safer just knowing. Yeah, I know how to use a gun because I use them with my father when I'm up in Maine. But even trained on how to use a gun, I've never shot a handgun though, so I don't know how to use it. But even if I were trained, I feel the responsibility of if something went down. And where is it going to be? In the subway, on the street, where there's low-level windows? We're right on the street here. We probably hurt somebody else. Yeah. So I'm kind of here, and it's just a reflection of, the way we're kind of raised here, I guess, because not a lot of people have them. I mean, the criminals have them, and law enforcement has them, but we don't have them in our homes generally. Yeah. Unless you deal with a lot of money, or if you work for if you have a business where you're constantly moving cash, those people might have guns. Yeah. But I feel like I would hurt somebody else. So, but out of the city, I could see. Yeah. More for animals, though. I don't live in fear of someone going to come and shoot me or kill. It's just not a fear of mine. Yeah. There's plenty of crime. I was stabbed with a kitchen knife when I was 14 years old. We've had
incidences.
Incidences. It's New York City. It was, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. There were gang fights in Staten Island. There were a lot of gangs with bats and all that stuff. But I don't live in fear someone might shoot me. Some of these, there's people that are I need this gun to protect my home. And I'm like,
in Baltimore, it's a different mindset. There's definitely that fear. In Baltimore, a home invasion could turn into a homicide. Yeah. Really quick. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just because you're home. And it's if you don't have something to kind of defend yourself, then you're pretty much left at that person's mercy, and I refuse to be. I was not going to be one of those guys. I grew up. My grandfather on my father's side, he had a gun. When the lights went. He lived in a pretty rough neighborhood too. It was my old neighborhood where I grew up. It's if the lights went out, and you walked in the house, you could hear him. I remember I was walking in the house one time, walking up the steps, and you can hear him cock it back. He said, "Announce yourself." And I was like, "Hey, Granddad, it's me. I'm just walking up the steps." Because that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity.
People get weird. We had, and especially in a big city when the lights go out, things get weird. All of a sudden elevators don't work, water towers don't function properly. Yeah. Things get weird. I remember when it was a blackout that we had. I don't remember which year it was, within the last 10, 12 years or something. We had the big New York City blackout.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Remember that? And like I remember watching this guy on the street. It was probably like 5 o'clock. Like the sun was still up, and he was like eating a piece of pizza, and he was like drinking a soda, and he like just threw everything on the ground. Like people just like start to. I'm like, you wouldn't do that if it was just a normal day. Like what? Like people just started to lose their shit. They started drinking on the street. I was like, why are we all acting so crazy? Just the lights went out. Like, but that's the opportunity. People get weird, and that's a great opportunity for crime because you can't respond.
Exactly.
You know, police can't respond as quickly.
Can't get to you. Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, okay, try it if you want.
Yeah. So anyway, we're talking about guns and stuff.
Yeah. So violent today.
You saw my notes. I wanted to ask you about those tattoos that you have. What do you got? What do you got and why?
I even have one on my ribs.
Words. Okay. You know, you like words. You post your Instagram is like all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on words. Words are like everything to me, which is interesting. Why I was put in a remedial English class, I used to read the dictionary. You know what I mean? Like I've always been fascinated with words. So, yeah, I love words. Like I have a quote on my ribs. It's a Steve Jobs quote. It's the people who are crazy enough to think that they could change the world are the ones that do. It's like that really kind of hit and resonated with me really heavy.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think I look like Steve Jobs a little bit?
You favor Steve Jobs a little bit.
I walked into the Apple store once. Now, when my hair grows in and you see like this, like I mean, you can see it now, but like when you really see like the balding middle-aged man thing, and my beard grows in, I got a little bit of the gray stubble, and I had on like a high. I didn't have a turtleneck on, but I had like a scarf on, and I walked in at the Apple store once, and one of the girls was like, "Yo, do you know who you look like?" And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I look like Steve Jobs a little bit."
You definitely you favor Steve.
That's some yoga stuff right there.
Yeah,
is that your new age man tattoo?
Yeah. I got the yoga, the lotus flower because I felt like it represented my life. You know, it's a beautiful flower and it's found in some of the ugliest places. You know, so it's found in a swamp essentially. So I was really big on that. This one right here is a bird flying, holding a dead rose. And I think what drew me to this one was the fact that it doesn't matter how ugly your situation is. There's always a possibility that somebody will come and still care for you. You know, I got this faith over fear on my forearm right after I got my personal training certification. It was difficult because it was the first business that I started of my own, and I was like, I got to be faithful more so than fearful. Dream catcher because the majority of my heritage is Native American.
Oh, I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
From the Blackfoot tribe. The majority of my heritage is Native American.
I was gonna make a joke. I was gonna say that's another new age man tattoo right there, but no, that's some real. Okay,
it's real.
I had no idea.
It's real.
So it's obvious from your Instagram and it's obvious from the tattoos we're talking about, but you like reinforcement. Like you try to fill your mind with positive shit. Yeah. Like you try to fill your mind with reminders and gratitude and things like that. You can see it in your tattoo work right there.
Absolutely. I believe it's important. And growing up, I didn't have it.
So you still get tattooed today.
Mm-hmm.
Tattooing, I don't know why, but it's like been a passion of mine since I was like 12 years old. And I used to buy all those old magazines with like the ugly biker girls on the cover that trying to look super hot or whatever. And I was really into the culture. And in 1999 was the last time I got tattooed. I got a bunch of tattoos. I've had friends tattoo me. I got my first tattoo when I was like 15, and I lied about my age. Tattooing was illegal in New York.
Oh, wow.
And we had to go to New Jersey. So we'd go to New Jersey, and so I got tattooed. I got my girlfriend's name tattooed on me, which I love the tattoo now. It's great. I'm still good friends with her. But, like, these are the kind of decisions I was making. I'm actually so glad that I did not have the money to get the tattoos I wanted to get back in the day because it would not have been a good look now. But, so in 1999, I had a bunch of tattoos. I got tattooed when I was young. One of my first tattoos, I got tattooed by a biker named Iggy Rats in a trailer out in Staten Island. Yeah, that was a weird experience. Yeah. Anyway, Iggy Rats. So in 1999, I was getting good tattoos finally. I was working in the city in the East Village, got tattooed by Chris Garver, who is kind of famous now from Miami Ink and some of the other shows. and he's fucking brilliant tattoo artist now.
Yeah.
But so the last time, so I was looking a little Red Hot Chili Pepper-ish. Like they were like spotted. It was the 90s, you know. I had like stuff spotted around. So I wanted to get it all filled in. I got, so I got a half sleeve. We kind of started to bring it all back together. Oh, wow. And this was this was the first tattooing I had done after I had gone vegan and got into cleansing and started fasting and stopped all the smoking. And that's where and I got really sick afterwards. And that's where I learned about becoming sensitive. So the cleaner we get, the more sensitive we become. And I got really sick, and I started to research tattoo pigment, and that shit there's nothing special. I thought it was like some biocompatible ink it's like they must have figured it out. Like this must be something that we can put in our skin because it's fine, right? And it's not. No. Like they get black ink from soot from like a chimney from like burning kerosene. They burn kerosene, and they do something. I forget what kind of oven it's called, but it's like they do something with it, like limit the oxygen or something like that. I forgot what it's called. And they burn kerosene in this chamber, and it creates all this soot, and then they scrape it up, and there's your ink.
Wow.
Like, like we would never eat a tablespoon of this. If like my apple fell in that, I'd be like, just throw it out.
Yeah.
But like we inject it in the skin.
Yeah. Crazy.
All of the colors are, they're primarily metal. So it's not like natural vegetable dyes. Like when you see the old sailors and stuff, and they have like this big blurry patch, like that was more of a vegetable-based pigment, and it wasn't as refined as it is now. But the same pigments they use for tattoos are from automobile paints, like all that kind of shit. Like
really?
a lot. Yeah, they did this whole article on it in one of the dermatology magazines, and they traced the pigments back to manufacturers, and the manufacturers were making it for paints, and they were like, people are doing what? Like they're putting this in their skin? Like are they fucking crazy? And
it's so crazy to even think about it because I've regretted getting tattooed.
You have?
Yeah. I was like, if I was, a lot of it was because I always loved tattoos. I thought they were super cool and dope. And then the other side was kind of I can't think of the word. Rebellious. I was being very rebellious. It was one thing, like when I started to get my forearm done, people would always say, if you get a tattoo, make sure it's from the elbow up because you can cover it.
Right.
And when I decided to go ahead and do the health and wellness industry and work for myself, I said, fuck the rules. I'm going to get this done. And that's what I did. You know what I mean? It was a lot of rebellion. Like, I'm going to get my entire arm done.
So you like reinforcement, like you would like managing your mind and feeding your mind good stuff. Who are your mentors or people that inspire you that sort of do similar work? Like, because you have basically you have a coaching practice right now, and you're a personal trainer, but also it seems like, working with people through anxiety and stuff like that and doing the public speaking you do and the type of content that you're creating on social media, that your goal is more about PMA, positive mental attitude, filling your mind with the right stuff. Like, who are the people that you look at?
Yeah, I love Earl Nightingale. He's amazing. I like, even today, I like Eric Thomas. E.T., the hip hop preacher.
Dr. Eric Thomas.
Dr. Eric
Follow
Thomas.
him on Snapchat. Yeah. He's on Snapchat.
Yeah, he is on Snapchat.
Yeah.
He has he does Snapchat the way I would want it done. Where it's like somebody's doing it for him and they're following around and they're showing things. Like, I'm not really the selfie Snapchat kind of guy. So it's like, I don't really like to be like, yeah, guys, and we can, it's like not really my thing. Dr. Eric Thomas, I love Les Brown, Zig Ziglar.
Old school Zig Ziglar.
Old school, yeah. Mr. Salesman, Zig Ziglar. Who else? Napoleon Hill, I think is amazing.
Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich. That was one of my favorite books. Was it Jack Canfield? I think he's amazing. Oprah Winfrey, of course.
She's incredible, right?
She's like that's my heart.
Bex always laughs at me. She's like, why do you love Oprah so much? I'm
Oprah.
like, because Oprah.
I mean, I'm manifesting. I'm going to be on Super Soul Sunday.
She likes Oprah too. She's curious why I love Oprah. So that's a goal of yours, Super Soul Sunday.
Super Soul Sunday is definitely. Yeah. I'm looking to get it with my first book.
Yeah.
I'm have lofty goals.
Let's get into the book.
I had an idea that I wanted to share. The original idea that I had for a book had nothing to do with my story. I wanted to do a prescriptive book. It's almost like the my trinity of wellness. I'm going to write about yoga and its benefits. I'm going to write about meditation. I'm going to give you juicing recipes, and here's my book, right?
It's a very template wellness book.
Yeah, that was a plan.
Yeah.
And Bex had introduced me to her. She had introduced me to her agent, and her agent was like, I think if this is the kind of book that you want to write, then I think you need to build a little bit more on that. And me being the resilient person that I am, I pretty much told her, like, listen, I'm gonna write this book with or without you, and it's gonna be very successful. It's gonna come out, and if I have to self-publish it, then I'll start saving now.
What does she mean build more
Platform, social media following, newsletter,
to give them a reason to want to invest in you?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It made sense.
Yeah.
But I'm very against the grain. I'm like, I'll turn shit into sugar real quick. And it was like, I think she noticed.
I never heard that.
Yeah.
I turn shit into sugar real quick. Okay.
So it's like
that might be the name of this podcast. Turning shit into sugar real quick.
Real quick. So, I think she heard this, the seriousness in my tone, and she was like, you know what? Listen, let's come in the office and let's talk. So it's like, went to the office, had the conversation, and I told my story about growing up with a father that's addicted to heroin, and being in Baltimore and living in the streets, and my addiction myself and overcoming it. And she was like, this is the book. Like, it was her and my current agent, Kim, kind of took the hold of it and said, this is the book. This is going to be the foundation of everything that you do. And we took a year. We worked on the proposal. She sent it out. Rodale had expressed interest before the proposal was even written, just based on the story. And they were the first to reach out after getting the proposal. They were the first to make an offer. I had entertained a few offers. Rodale's offer was the best. They got the importance of the narrative. I love what they do. I love what they represent, what they stand for. And I thought that it was, I still feel to this day that it's the best publisher for me.
Rodale Press. They're the ones that are always putting out they put out the men's health books.
Men's health, women's health, prevention, organic life.
I've read
runners,
some of the books over the years.
Yeah, magazines every month. They have books with like Suzanne Summers. They did LL Cool J's book. They have Lisa Rankin, I do believe, did a book through them.
That's who you met with this morning?
No, I met with someone that I just brought on as my new manager.
Well, that person you were working with was right, though, because people want authenticity these days. That's why Vice got so popular. I mean, we have news coverage. What was Vice? I actually was one of the early Vice watchers when they had a website they called it VBS.TV, and I was bored. I was Googling something, taking like a 5-minute break, and I Googled Norwegian black metal, and this documentary came up about Norwegian black metal. I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And these guys, and then there was another one called The Vice Guide to North Korea. And I was like, oh, let me watch that. And I was like, holy shit. And it felt like my friends went. Like, I really connected to it. It wasn't like, Tom Brokaw, reporting on, some, it was and I was like, wow, these guys are really cool. And then, a couple of years later, they fucking exploded. Wow. And it's because it's authentic, and people want authenticity. I had somebody recently in the wellness world tell me something. They were like, yeah, when I wrote that book or whatever. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you had a book. I was like, I'm going to check it out. And they were like, it's all fluff. We needed the book because I was doing the show, and we did.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, what the fuck did you write a book for? Wow. I get it, whatever they were trying to do. I get it. But I was just like, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of hollow, very safe stuff that lacks authenticity, and it lacks personality. So, people are hungry for that. They love that kind of stuff.
And I think Rodale, they got that.
Yeah.
There was a few people that, wanted me to just kind of change everything. And I was just like, I can't make this PG-13 because I didn't live a PG-13 life. I have to tell the story the way that it happened, and that means, detailing some shit that you might not like, but it's like we all have ugly things that we've experienced in our lives. So why not? It took a while for me to do it, though. They pushed me to do it. I didn't want to tell the story, not in its, full extent.
Why? Did you feel vulnerable? Was it painful, or what?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Definitely difficult to revisit. And even now, I still kind of underestimated how emotionally taxing this process is, because this is not a prescriptive book. This is a memoir. This is my life. This is my truth as I know it, and I'm literally sharing, parts of my world, and I'm generally a very private person. Mm-hmm. I don't share a lot. You know what I mean?
It's a hard thing to do these days. It's going to be more hard for you to do when they're pushing you to do tours and more Periscope, and I'm pushing you to Snapchat.
Yeah.
So I'm probably running out of battery. I don't want these cameras to shut off. I think we need to throw around the mace.
Yeah.
And I think we need to make some banana ice cream.
I'm down for that.
Chill out. So, QuentinVennie.com. I'm going to do a whole intro to this because I know it seemed really sloppy because I didn't introduce you or anything. But I don't know if you've ever seen the podcast. But I do a whole little intro, and then we just roll. I trust you, roll into it.
It's your thing.
We'll make it good. Yeah. Don't worry. Yeah, man. So, do you have any events or any things coming up? People check out?
I'm in talks with a group called Native Society. They're supposed to be putting together some kind of a wellness conference this spring. I'm waiting to get some more information on it. Sign up for my newsletter, QuentinVennie.com. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even Snapchat for updates and information on that. Because if it does go through, I will be doing some speaking there. But as of right now, my main priority is just finishing the book. I have to submit that by June, July. And I'm, about a quarter way through. So
it's going to be good stuff. Yeah, he's really private. You hear how many social media accounts he rattled off? Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Always
this
a pleasure.
Was good.
I appreciate it.
Have a good afternoon.
Yeah.
For the listeners, thank you so much. By the way, we're number one in the detox category on iTunes. Amazing. So if you're listening on iTunes, that's amazing. Everydaydetox.org, ebooks, all sorts of things coming up. Thanks, Quinton. This was dope.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
This is good stuff, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.